Greetings, greenhouse people. We are back at it with another episode of Tech on Demand, brought to you by the fine folks at GrowerTalks magazine. If you don't receive GrowerTalks and Green Profit every month, head over to GrowerTalks.com and subscribe. We've been a pillar of the industry for 75 years. It is about time you join the club. And speaking of subscribing, be sure you subscribe to the Tech on Demand podcast on your favorite podcast app. We're on Apple, Google, Spotify, Odyssey, and just about all of them. And once you subscribe, you'll never miss an episode. I'm your host, Bill Calkins, and we're actually recording this live at American Hort's Cultivate 2024 event on the trade show floor. And it's always more fun to record a podcast face-to-face, especially with a great guest that I know and respect. And today I'm happy to be joined by JC Chong from SePRO. JC is a trusted expert when it comes to greenhouse and nursery pests, and you probably know the name. He's written a bunch of articles for GrowerTalks and is currently the editor of our PestTalks newsletter. And he's been on the Tech on Demand podcast before. JC's also presented at tons of industry events, and he might have been your college professor back in the day. And that's my segue to your bio, JC. JC is the Technical Development Manager at SePRO, following an extensive academic career that includes a Bachelor of Science in Ecology and Evolutionary Biology from the University of Arizona, graduate training at the University of Georgia, post-doctoral training at University of Florida, and a professorship at Clemson. With almost 20 years in the turf and ornamentals industry, he's now leading SePRO's ornamental R&D program, delivering innovative solutions to complex problems. He's known for his expertise in insect and mite pest management, and I think you're the perfect person to dive deep into a few critical chemistries from SePRO, some of the new research you guys have been doing, and why these products offer more benefits than maybe meets the eye. And I don't want to waste any more time. JC, why don't we just jump into the discussion?
Sure, let's do that.
All right, it's a plan. First off, for the folks listening in real time, mums are in the field, poinsettias have been transplanted and hopefully off to a good start, and fall crops like pansies, cabbage, and kale are on the way. And I'm sure plenty of perennials are starting to color up for fall sales in nurseries. What are you hearing out there in the field? Are there any pests or diseases growers should be on the lookout for this time of year or heading into fall?
Right, and right now, the most I heard about are thrips and spider mite.
Okay.
Those are the two big things that's going on right now. But, as we are transitioning into the fall, and as the mums and poinsettia come in, we're going to have a different sets of pests to deal with. So for folks that are growing mums in the field right now, I would definitely start a good scouting program for thrips and aphid and caterpillars.
Sure.
Caterpillars can be a huge problem at some time, especially growing in the field. Now, for poinsettia, if you are still sort of in the early potting stage or transplant stage, I would definitely look for a fungus gnat.
Mm-hmm.
That is a big issue early in the season, but as the plant getting bigger, whitefly is going to take over.
Okay.
And in the past few years, we're seeing a few more Lewis mite that's popping up on poinsettia crop as well. So watch out for that. So don't assume it's just plain old two-spotted spider mite. It could be a Lewis mite. And the management could be a little bit different in that regard. As far as fall crop is concerned, again, when folks are propagating fall crops, when they are seeding fall crops, fungus gnat, watch out for that.
And what is it that makes something like a Lewis mite start appearing, in the last few years?
Well, I think a lot of it probably has a lot with propagation.
Okay.
And the population started there and slowly transferred down the production process. Now, say that it's not the end of the world, because when you get your cutting in, it doesn't matter whether you have spider mite or whiteflies. A pre-plant transplant dip with oil and Bovella bassiana works pretty well when you deal with thrips, whiteflies, spider mite, and pests like that.
So that makes sense.
Start clean. You're probably going to stay clean.
I was just about to say, I'm guessing that a lot of that starts with good sanitation practices.
Absolutely. Yep. You start beginning, and you're going to have an easier time later on.
Excellent. And how about this past spring? I know you said we were talking, and you said you were in greenhouses probably up to half your time.
Right.
What were you seeing out there? Anything that was really causing issues for growers?
Right now, there's not anything out of the ordinary. But I am starting to hear more and more about thrips parvispinus,
Okay.
and that's the invasive thrips that is going around. People call it pepper thrips, people call it Taiwanese thrips, different kind of names. But started out in Florida, getting big problem, and now more and more states are having the issues as well. And more recently, actually, a colleague of mine actually found it on landscape plant in South Carolina.
Oh, wow.
And they're already out in the landscape in Florida. So they are spreading around. So that is something that folks need to also watch out for.
Right.
And not too long ago, I was in California. And one thing that people ask me all the time is, do you have anything for agave mites or aloe mites? I was like, not a whole lot. So agave mites and Lewis or the aloe mite, the biggest problem is that they were high deep inside the plant, so it's very, very hard to get to them.
Okay. So you've got to scout, you've got to look carefully and know what you're looking for.
Right, and when you're using any kind of miticide at all, especially those that are effective against aerophyte mites, you need to make sure you put in a penetrant or surfactant so that the miticide solution can get deep inside.
Okay.
To deal with those mites in there.
So have a plan, have the products on hand.
Right.
Definitely have a plan for thrips parvispinus if it shows up in your operation.
Absolutely.
Know what you're going to do before it shows up.
Right. For the thrips parvispinus, I guess in some way I make it easy for folks. I have developed a rotation guide for thrips parvispinus, and folks can get it online.
Okay.
For sure. And we recently updated that guide. So using some of the more recent data from Florida, and we make it better.
Perfect. And we talked about that in our last podcast, so I will put that link in the show notes for sure.
Right.
And I would encourage folks to go back in the archives. I'll also put a link to that podcast, and you can go right to the end where JC and I talk about the thrips parvispinus and go deep into it. So
sure.
Excellent. I'm glad that you guys have updated that. That's awesome, because I know new research is coming out constantly. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we keep it up all the time, just so that we can develop the best solution possible.
Well, and that's why you're here, because you guys at SePRO definitely develop great solutions and great products. And I know that a lot of your products, you guys do a ton of research.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, here in your booth, you have trial plants on display, which is fun to see, just the huge improvements from using some of your products. So let's get down to business and talk about some products and some research results. Why don't we start with Top Floor, PGR. Sure. Why did you put this one on your list to cover today?
Well, PGR, Top Floor has been out for some time.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like we have so much research now that I want to remind people of Top Floor again in some way, just to remind folks how easy it is to use. Now, I'm an entomologist.
Right.
What the heck do I know about plants, right? So I kind of have to learn about PGR basically since I joined SePRO. Kind of have to learn what they're like. And two things about Top Floor that really impressed me. First thing is control. The other thing is versatility.
Oh.
What I mean by control is that you can look at Top Floor at different rate. The response of the plant to the rate is pretty linear. So the more you use, obviously, it's going to be more compact.
Mm-hmm.
But that relationship is predictable because it's linear. Okay. So if a grower they do a trial and they say 30 is too much control, 10 is not enough. If they go to 20,
right in the middle,
they'll be right. They're just going to get the characteristic that they really, really want. So that is actually a very, very easy thing to do. So we actually have we look at a lot of different plant species and cultivars, mm-hmm. and we develop a rotation. The rate chart like that. So with a lot of different plant
based on species.
Based on species. So with the starting rate and where we find to be more effective. So folks can also get this online. Pretty easy. Now, some people are more used to using prochlorpyrrolizole mm-hmm. or uniconazole, which is fine, but we also have a suggested rate chart. For if you folks want to try Top Floor to convert from that. So it's a very easy conversion rate.
That makes sense.
So we just...
Is it working? Are people converting?
Oh yeah, Yeah, absolutely. We
Good.
are starting to have a lot of folks trialing it, and they get really nice compact plants at a very economic price
Okay.
because the rate of top floor is about the mixing rate is about 1 milliliter per gallon. They will give you 1 ppm.
Oh, okay.
So it's a very very
That's
low, small amount. In
that
fact,
is.
one of our technical specialists basically give people syringes
Yeah.
so they can use that,
Just that.
draw a small amount to mix it. So there's the top floor, and you can use top floor in any application method you want.
Okay.
It works best as a drench,
Okay.
but folks can also spray it. They can soak it. They can micro apply it. In fact, for folks that are doing poinsettia right now, top floor is a great choice because you can do a micro application at the beginning. For example, if you drench with 1 ppm,
Right.
do half a ppm at the beginning
Okay.
and then half a ppm later on. So in that way, you can actually get much better control
Sure.
that way, and at a much lower cost.
Makes a lot of sense. And when I think about PGRs, obviously, like you said, the goal is to slow down growth and keep the plants compact and branching. What about any overall plant quality aspects of it? Because I know I've heard you talk about top floor helping growers produce these like wow crops for gardens and landscapes.
right.
What can you talk a little bit about just overall plant quality that you've seen in trials and in greenhouses from folks using top floor?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, you see some of the result here with
Yeah.
the trial plants that we have. So top floor not only give you a much more compact plant, but the way they are sort of make them compact is to really shorten the cell.
Okay.
So instead of the cell is that long, you ended up shrinking them to about that much, stopping them from growing as much. But you are not losing any of the chloroplast inside that cell. So what it is that you are compressing a lot of chloroplast in that one smaller cell, and therefore you have a much greener plant. So
Okay.
that's one thing about it. And top floor also doesn't stunt the meristem, which is where all the flower buds come from.
Right.
So top floor doesn't stop the flowering. It doesn't delay flower. It doesn't reduce flower. So kind of think about it though. If you have a much smaller plant, greener foliage, more
flowers.
and they all packed together in that one tiny plant, now that's an eye catcher.
Right.
That's a great looking plant, right? So, and another benefit is that the stem, because they're shorter, they're also stiffer.
Okay.
Meaning that when you pick it up plant, you stuff it in the shell, you don't have to worry too much about
Right.
breaking them when you are shipping.
Is that what was on that delphinium that was over there?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
that delphinium is basically one of our delphinium right now. You can see the difference between the untreated and the one that's sprayed.
Yeah.
With,
it was
with
about
a
as
top
obvious as it gets.
Yes, absolutely. The one that you saw, delphinium, is like, well, the plant is a little bit more spread out, and the flower stalk is, the flowers are also more spread out. But the one treated with top floor is like more compact.
Yeah.
The note between the flowers are much shorter, and then you ended up having a bunch,
Yeah.
a nice looking flower.
That would have sold the minute
altogether.
you put it on the bench at retail.
Oh, absolutely.
That's cool. And that about top floor, it sounds like I said, there's so many benefits and more than actually meet the eye when you think about a PGR. Let's talk a little bit about Optico, because when you sent me information and I read it, I always read the information,
Sure.
I study up on this stuff, I know just enough to be dangerous, but I saw a word that was new to me. I Googled it because I'm a word person, and it was plant symbiont.
Right.
And I like that word, it's a cool word, but maybe talk a little bit about the new research using Optico and I guess help me understand what I read on Google about symbiont.
Sure.
What does that mean?
Well, I guess the easiest way to think about a relationship between the plant and the symbiont is that the symbiont, for example, in this case, is trichoderma bacteria in Optico. So the trichoderma bacteria get a place to live.
Okay.
So in return, they provide a service, and in this case, are basically protection.
So that's the SYMB.
It's a mutualistic
Okay,
relationship
right.
in some way.
Makes sense.
So Optico, or the trichoderma in Optico, the two species of them, would give protection to the root from pathogen and also from stress.
Okay.
And so we have done quite a bit of work as far as research-wise recently on the symbiont side of Optago, the benefit of it, and just to see how much it promotes root growth and root health
Yeah.
in propagation, also finishing. So in propagation, well, for example, one of the nursery, Greenleaf Nursery in
Yeah.
Park Hill,
Oh, yeah.
Oklahoma, they produce their stock plants, their root stocks, just by seeding.
Okay.
Okay, dogwood is one of those plants that's really difficult to germinate. It just die. You can look at it; it just kill over. It's
Right.
really difficult. So they always have a very high mortality rate.
Yeah.
So what they would do is basically that they just toss those the dogwood seed in Optago, the powder itself. Just toss it in, sift it out, and then just
Then
throw it
just
out. Just
sow it like
sow
normal.
it like what they do. And what they're seeing is that, within 9 weeks or so, they got 90% survival instead of much lower survival rate than what it
Wow.
was. So we're doing a lot of work in that respect now. So we're also doing a lot of work with how can we promote rooting, how fast you can promote rooting just by dipping
Dipping
Optago.
into Optago.
Yep, and then direct sticks. So we're having a lot of new research coming out on that.
That's awesome. And I think, anytime you're talking about reducing losses,
Yep.
that goes right to the bottom line. That's fantastic.
Yep, and that in our industry, the shrink from the beginning to the end
Oh, yeah?
is always a problem.
Right.
And Optago is definitely one way to help you reduce
Excellent.
that shrink.
I think the listeners need to look into that for sure. If you're seeing losses in propagation, sounds like kind of a no-brainer to trial it, at
Absolutely.
least,
Absolutely.
if nothing else. And Optago is a fungicide, right?
Yes, it's a biofungicide.
Like biofungicide, which means it controls fungal pathogens. I know that much. But what makes it unique, or something from a fungicide perspective that, besides the improved rooting, what else makes it unique that growers need to take a look at?
Well, Optago by itself, like I say, it outcompetes the pathogen. In fact, Trichoderma species is known to be what we call mycoparasite,
Okay.
meaning that they actually parasitize those pathogens.
Interesting.
So they would actually attack the spores of the fungi or the spore of oomycete, and then kind of kill them that way. So they kind of outcompete them, and they also kill them. So I would look at Optago basically more as a preventive product.
Okay.
Go ahead and put it in your tank. Go ahead and drench it. Go ahead and spray it out, and so that you actually protect your root from any potential pathogens that might come in later on. So it would be the first steps in any kind of disease management program. And folks will be like, well, if you do it so early, is it going to last? It will, because the Optago, the bacteria itself, will actually live in the soil.
It's a living
thing. So like I said earlier, it's a symbiote, right? It lives with the root, it protects the root, and it gets some benefit from the root. So it would actually stay in that medium, right? So when they stay in that medium, they provide long-term support.
Sure.
And the application rate is pretty low. The drench rate we have now is 5 ounce per 100 gallon.
Okay.
It's tiny bit,
Yeah.
but it goes a long way.
Excellent. Sounds like a great new option. So we've talked PGRs, we've talked fungicides for ornamentals, but I know that you guys are in other markets as well.
Right.
And you have a super strong background in nursery, and there's a lot of listeners and folks even at this show with nurseries. So let's talk about Stricor.
Sure.
Because I know that when I walked into your booth, that's one of your main messages for the show, but also means that that's a product you guys are super excited about. And it's a pre-emergent herbicide,
Right.
correct? And we don't see a lot of new actives being released in turf and nursery markets when it comes to pre-emergence. So Stricor is exciting for you guys. Why is Stricor exciting for our listeners?
No, you just said it. Stricor is exciting, and the reason why it's exciting is that it is the first new pre-emergent active ingredient for at least the past 10 years. We haven't got anything for almost 10 years, right? So this is new. And the active ingredient of Stricor is Betoxamate. And this is a brand new active ingredient. You're not going to find it with anybody else other than SePRO. And you're not going to be able to find it in the ag market. It is only in turf and ornamental market.
Oh, interesting.
With SePRO. So it is very exciting stuff. Now, Stricor we've been working on it for the past few years, and then we're starting to learn more and more about it. And it is effective against a lot of annual grasses, for example, crabgrass, annual bluegrass, some of the more common grass species that people deal with, and also some small seed broadleaf weeds as well.
Okay.
So henbit, oxalis, bittercress. And what we focus on is basically, well, how can we fit strike four in everybody's weed management program? Because when people talk about weed management, residual control is very important,
Right.
so that you don't have to come in and keep spraying Roundup.
That's
all the
labor.
time.
That's
Right.
labor and chemical costs.
Absolutely. So what you want to do is basically you stack your pre-emergent together so that your residual will overlap, and you ended up getting a much longer term support. So it's control. So one thing we find out about strike four is that it is an absolutely good tank mix partner
Okay.
with a lot of other pre-emergent herbicide. For example, Marengo, for example, Shore Guard. Depending on what weed species people are dealing with, we can find a good tank mix for people to get it. Some of these tank mixes actually provide control for 5 months.
So you're covering all bases for a long period of time.
For a very long period of time. And for some of the chemical, some of the pre-emergent that's out there, the tank mix actually can save them money when it comes to control, giving you good control,
Interesting.
broad spectrum control, give you long-term control, and cheaper when it comes to some products.
Those are the selling points that people like to hear.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, people always ask me, yeah, I spray herbicide.
Right.
I have a lot of acres. What can I use that is cheap and effective? So now we actually have a product for that.
That's
for
a fun
sure.
one to talk about.
Yeah, it is. And we're doing a lot of work right now, in field nursery. Strikeforce right now is registered for management of weed around plants,
Okay.
or just between plants,
Yeah.
basically bare ground. So you can also use it around the pots as well.
Nice. Sounds like a great product.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's something a lot of people at the show are going to be coming up and asking about, or
Yes.
at least learning about.
Learning about it, and a big part of what I'm doing now is, try to be a weed scientist in some way.
Right.
So I'm looking at how to best use strikeforce in a program, and and also look at crop safety of
Right.
strikeforce, and that's a lot of my time spending on crop
Sure,
safety.
because herbicides are known for causing
Yes.
issues in crops.
Yes, and if you're not careful, and then if you spray on a windy day,
Right.
and you're gonna get some injuries.
Yeah.
So we're looking at quite a few things, and we're seeing some really, really very good safety on
Okay.
conifers,
Good.
and also a lot of broadleaves as well. So eventually, we hope this product, we might be able to, do an over-the-top application.
Oh, wow.
Right now, it's not registered for over-the-top, but
Right.
we would like to get more data to support that application.
There you go.
Yeah.
So you're not just an entomologist.
No.
You're a weed scientist, too.
I'm a weed scientist too, and I'm a horticulturalist, and I'm a pedologist.
Oh,
It's
love
like,
it.
this is what this job kind of offer me. It's like
Right.
all different kind of things, all different kind of hats that I can put on in some way.
That is fun. That is fun. And you guys have been busy. I mean, you can tell in the booth when you look at the products, look at all of the great educational information and resources. And I really appreciate you for sharing all this information. Do you have any, I always ask this, are there any final thoughts, anything we missed?
Nice.
Is there anything that we got to talk about before we wrap this up?
Well, kind of want to go back to something that we just mentioned very beginning.
Sure.
As we move forward, get deeper into this mom and poinsettia season, and also coming the fall crop season, I want to remind folks that, just like medicine, 1 ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Right.
So what I would say is, think carefully about how everybody grow your plants. Make sure that you have a healthy start.
Right.
And so think about your sanitation, think about your using some plant symbiont, just to make sure you have a healthy root system. If you have healthy root, you have healthy plant. You have healthy plant, you have a good looking plant.
Yep.
And if you have a good looking plant, that is a plant that's going to sell.
Right.
Right. So that's what I want to leave everybody with that. So, if people come across any kind of pests along the way, always reach out to me.
Perfect. And I encourage them to. I also encourage them to read your newsletter.
Yes.
Because a lot of times you're talking about stuff that's timely. It's happening right then. And if you read it and hear some of your suggestions and strategies, you might be able to get ahead of these things without having to deal with the consequences. And thank you so much for joining to share some of your expertise. Thanks for dedicating your time with the newsletter. As a newsletter writer, I know that takes time, it takes thought. It's also kind of fun, and I hear great things about it, and I steal from it all the time in my newsletter. And you just mentioned reaching out with questions or anything. If any of the listeners or viewers want to reach out to you or any of the experts at SePRO, where do they find this information?
Well, folks can always reach out to me through email.
Okay.
jc.chong@sepro.com.
Yep.
So initial J and C dot Chong, CHONG, at
Okay.
SePRO, SEPRO.com.
Perfect.
Or they can just Google Chong SePRO. And like you say, they can always just kind of go to my newsletter, PestTalks, and there's links on the PestTalks newsletter to get to me.
And SePRO.com as a website has tons of resources,
Absolutely.
like all these rotations and strategies that you guys come up with through your research. A lot of it's posted there.
Yes.
And I will put those links in the show notes as well. And I encourage listeners and viewers, reach out to SePRO, talk to the experts on their team. They are there for you and a great partner to have. JC, call him. JC, I appreciate it. Thank
Bill,
you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
And I'm Bill Calkins with Tech on Demand, reminding you to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite app. That way you'll never miss an episode. And jump back in the archives, because there's more than 130 episodes just like this one. Well, maybe not as entertaining as JC, but very useful, packed with tons of information. And here's to a fantastic fall season. And take care out there.